Norma, can you open us in prayer, please? Okay, so we're in Genesis 33, a more relatively short chapter, although still filled with lots of drama and excitement. So in chapter 32, right before this chapter, we had Jacob's plans that he had established to try to protect himself and his possessions relatively against Esau, who he knew was coming with 400 men. He also had his little skirmish battle with God. What? For him, it was a big deal, obviously. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. All right, so like normal, I'll read through the chapter, and then we'll go over some questions and whatever else that we discuss. Genesis 33. Now Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and there Esau was coming, and with him were 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two maidservants, and he put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. Then he crossed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted his eyes and saw the women and children and said, "Who are these with you?" So he said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the maidservants came near, they and their children, and bowed down. And Leah also came near with her children, and they bowed down. Afterward Joseph and Rachel came near, and they bowed down. Then Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company which I met?" And he said, "These are to find favor in the sight of my Lord." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." And Jacob said, "No, please. If I have now found favor in your sight, then receive my present from my hand, inasmuch as I have seen your face as though I had seen the face of God, and you were pleased with me. Please take my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough." So he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, "Let us take our journey, let us go, and I will go before you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are weak, and the flocks and herds which are nursing are with me. And if the men should drive them hard one day, all the flock will die. Please let my Lord go on ahead before his servant. I will lead on slowly at a pace which the livestock that go before me and the children are able to endure until I come to my Lord in Seir." And Esau said, "Now let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." But he said, "What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord." So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. And Jacob journeyed to Succoth, built himself a house, and made booths for his livestock. Therefore the name of the place is called Succoth, which literally means booths. Then Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came to Padan Aram, and he pitched his tent before the city. And he bought the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected an altar there and called it El Elohe Israel, or God, the God of Israel. Okay, so a little bit of history, a little bit of drama going on, right? And we're continuing this timeline that we had established from earlier. So, question number 1, who or what was most important to Jacob? And how did he show this? What? He's already gone from him. He's been gone 3 chapters. I would say he's long gone. I mean, we're back in the land of Canaan now. Okay. Is he still worried about Esau? Esau, Esau, Esau. It's a different perspective. I don't necessarily see it along those lines per se. If we go back in timeline, he left Laban originally because God told him to. Right? Like as much as that was a problem for Jacob, he left originally because God's like, it's time to go back home. Go back to Canaan. Right now, Israel, his father, Isaac, is still alive. He hasn't died yet, which is also why we kind of chuckle at the fact that they had that big fight over blessing, because Isaac was going to die and he's still alive 25 years later-ish. So, but Isaac's still alive, right? Esau's over here in the land. Jacob is on his way back. Laban gets upset, chases after him, does all the other stuff, because realistically, Jacob is Laban's gold card for money, right? So Jacob's leaving. He's now back on his own without God's blessing of his stuff. But it doesn't necessarily mean that Jacob's just trying to be out from underneath everybody. Like, he's on this mission to go back home that God put him on. That's kind of the overarching goal right now. The problem is that at home is a brother. And he doesn't know what Esau's temperament is in relations to him yet. And they left on bad terms. I mean, I'd be scared. You, as not a warrior, finds out your brother's coming, who you basically ripped off of everything that he wanted and held dear. You took it for yourself and you fled. And he's coming to meet you with 400 men who are probably armed and know how to use their weapons if they're with Esau. And lots of flocks, lots of money and possessions, and probably not a lot of combatants. So, like the last chapter, right? He's made all these plans, all these, plan A, plan B, plan C, if things go south, what to do to try to save what he can when he tries to flee. Because he can't fight Esau. There's no way. And so that brings us back to verse 1, right, in this chapter. Because Jacob looks up, right? He's at that river crossing where he had the skirmish with God. And Esau's there with 400 men. He's finally showed up in the morning. So the question that I framed, it's a targeted question. But it's targeted on this end of verse 1 and verse 2 in this carryover here. Because he looks up and he sees Esau coming with 400 men. And so he divides the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 maidservants. So basically, the children go with their mothers, and their mothers are put in a position of importance. So the question here is, who or what was most important to Jacob? How did he show this? Who was least important to him is the one he put up front. They're the first ones to die, if anyone's going to die, right? Which is the maidservants. They are not as important as the 2 sisters. Then you have Leah, right, and her children, all 6 of them. And then last is Rachel and Joseph. So this is still showing, to me, his favoritism towards Rachel and Joseph. Now, kudos to him. He went ahead and crossed over before them. I think that was from his skirmish the night before. They don't go towards the count. They don't go towards the count. In a battle, they're not part of the numbers. Okay, so Jacob's crossing the river, right? Bows himself to the ground 7 times till he gets to his brother. But what did Esau do when he finally reunited with Jacob? How do you show that? Okay. It's interesting because it says, and they wept. In my head, it's they cried for very different reasons. Or both for relief, but relief for different reasons. One's happy to see his brother. The other one's happy he's still alive. Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 No, they weren't identical. One was hairy. No. But here's part of the thing too, right? We have Jacob's story. Right? We've gone through Jacob's story. We've watched him as he's lived his life. Esau's kind of a little bit in the gray area over on the side. Right? We kind of know kind of what's happening, but not much. But from where he was left off at, right, as just a hunter, he's by himself still, not really in charge of stuff, to where he's at least in charge of 400 men, which probably means a whole lot more than that if he's leaving guys back behind. He's going back to Sierra, which is a really big city at this point. he's probably in charge of that, or in charge of a big portion of that. Isaac is part of Isaac's holdings, right? Abraham kind of started that city, but Isaac doesn't stay there. Isaac or Abraham have not been there, in years. So he's probably in charge of that city and the surrounding area. So he's had his own progression as he's growing and stuff. And we obviously, he's come back with zero animosity, right? Zero hard feelings per se. And so at some point, God's made a change in his life. It's just the fact that they just don't necessarily know about each other yet. Knowing that now, right, and establishing that factor now, as we go through the rest of this chapter, it makes it a little bit interesting. And it still goes back a lot to what Grandpa said a little bit about how if you sin in this way, because that's your outlook on life, you think a lot of other people do the same thing, right? If he sneaks around all the time, he thinks everybody else does. So he's on guard against that, because that's what he would do, right? So as we go through here, right, so the next question, number 3, which he kind of already answered, how scared do you think Jacob is towards his family when he first meets Esau? I mean, it's almost like he throws him under the bus again. Like, no, but in verse 8, Esau says, what do you mean by all this company which I met? And he said, these are to find favor in the sight of my Lord. And Esau says, I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. Yes. We'll also say that Esau came from a more position of power. So it's easier to trust when you know the other person can't backstab you per se. Alternatively, right, Jacob just had this one-on-one with God, and Jacob's been informed multiple times that God has it handled. But yeah, as we see through this, Jacob still is like, okay, I get that, but I'm also going to do my own handling, keep myself safe, which we've talked about last time. So in verse 10, this goes back because it's a little bit confusing here. Jacob set up an offering to give to Esau that he had sent out ahead before, like the night before. So this was like chapter or 2 chapters ago. And so this is what Jacob's giving to Esau, and Esau is rejecting it. And Jacob's like forcing it on Esau. And so, at the end of verse 11, Jacob urged him, and Esau took it. So he went ahead and took that offering from Jacob that was like, being forced on him. Probably to make sure he stays in his good books. Like, you don't have a reason now to go against me, right? I've given you animals and whatever. So then after this, right, how does Esau respond? I put to Jacob's humbleness, but it's, to me, I'm not there, right? I don't know. But it seems to be more fake humbleness to make sure he stays in good graces more than humbleness out of the goodness of his heart. Yeah, kind of. That's what it seems to me, anyway. No. No, and I mean, you also have the fact that, if you don't see family in a long time, most people will bring them a gift, right? It's kind of the thing to do. No, just a gift, right? I mean, and I'm talking about like right now, like in society nowadays. If you don't see somebody for a long time and you're away from like the area, right? You finally to go see them, you bring them a gift. It just Yeah, and that's just kind of how it works, right? And that's not to buy them off or anything like that. But for this, knowing the context behind Jacob's scarediness of Esau, I see this more as a buy off or a good deed per se. Like I have check marks in my good book with me against you, so you shouldn't have a reason to turn on me because I just gave you bonus points. I got brownie points, right? Um, but in this, right, Esau's response is like, "Hey, let us take our journey. I'll take you back to my city, right, back to where I live, and you can chill, hang out, whatever you want to do. And I'll go before you. I'll make sure I'll clear the way, right? You follow along behind. I'll go before, keep you safe, all that type of stuff as we make our way back to where Esau was staying. Because Jacob doesn't have a place to stay right now, technically, right? God told him to go back to home, but home's this massive area of land. He hasn't seen Isaac yet. So then, what does Jacob do, though? Why? Okay. He's still scared of him, right? If I'm with him and something goes wrong, he can turn on me, right? Yes. So what does Jacob do to get Esau to not like worry about Jacob per se? I'll stay behind. What was the reasons he gave? What is his list of excuses? Okay. How old are the children? Right, Joseph's the youngest. No, he's not that old. Joseph's like 6. What? Yeah. But when it's said to me, it's just interesting because children, the only one that's a child really is Joseph, and even he's like 5 or 6 years old. He's not an infant. Yeah, and Esau doesn't know this, right? But all the livestock just gave birth when they left Laban's. They're not going to have another one right away. But it's been a couple months. Anyways, to me it's just like what's a reasonable excuse I can make that is valid enough that he won't really question it. So anyway, so Esau, is like, hey, that's fine. Let me leave some men with you to, protect you. Which is, a bodyguard that can also be your killing squad, right? That's what Jacob's worried about. So we're not told most of that. We know that he married the people of the area. Yeah. Mom was not happy, right? Because that brought other gods into the area. So that was the excuse Rebecca made to Isaac to send Jacob away. Because they were worried that if Jacob stayed there, he would also marry those types of women. We know now, obviously, that Esau is in a position of power. I will almost guarantee you that if God did not show up to him at some point, his attitude right now would not be what it is. That doesn't mean he's built a relationship with God, but he's at least come to terms of what Jacob did. Part of this is that, he lost that stuff so many years ago. It's not like it happened 2 days ago and he's still livid over that. He's had a lot of times to think about it and he's moved on in life, right? He's not let that define him. Like he's become a powerful man in charge of other people. Whereas if he just sat in his tent and pitied himself, that wouldn't have happened. He obviously hasn't built a mentality of revenge, right? Because he's not after Jacob now. So whatever's happened in his life and whatever God's worked in his life, it's done something, right? Because his attitude's changed, his mentality has changed. He's working his way up. Right now, he's obviously happy to see his brother, wants to protect his brother. Jacob doesn't necessarily see it that way, but that's on Jacob. Right? It's not on Esau. Esau's not acting all sneaky. He's not, putting Jacob at risk about anything. Yes. Yeah. Which he does. I mean, Esau has a lot of stuff too. If nothing else, he inherited a lot of it from Isaac. I mean, just guaranteed. Um, okay, so where does Esau go? Where's he heading back to? Yeah, yeah. So he's heading back to what I'm just gonna assume is his city. We're not technically what? So where did Jacob go? Succoth. Yeah. Well, I found Succoth. I found Shechem. I'm looking up for where Sierra is. Okay, so Succoth is like a mile off the Jordan River, halfway between the Salt Sea and the Sea of Chinnereth, which is way up north. See the Sea of Chinnereth up top, and then the Jordan River runs from there down to the Salt Sea. About halfway down and a mile to the west is Succoth. It's also right along the river Jabbok, which runs into the Jordan River. And then about halfway between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, directly east or directly west, is Shechem. Um, Shechem is over by Samaria. Tirzah and Shiloh, it's like in the middle of those little triangles there. So we're looking at like, so if we go to like later in history where you have Judah that's down south and then Israel that's up above, we're like in the dead middle of what Israel would be. And so then you have Judah down below. At the very bottom left of Judah, along the border of Judah, is where Seir is. That's where Esau is in control of, and that's where all his descendants are. So when Moses is bringing them back towards the promised land, the first people they go through, which I think are the Ammonites, or any of them, but those are descendants of Esau. And that's why they go through those first, because they're like on the borders of what Judah would become. So if we're coming from wherever they're coming from the east, right? He's coming over from the land of Ur to a degree, where Laban is, right? He's coming over into Israel. You go way down to the bottom is where Esau is going. And he's going directly across. So not following Esau. Also, I will definitely tell you that Jacob does know where Seir is. It would be part of Isaac's holdings, because Isaac was in charge of all of that area. Or at least, he would be aware of where it is anyway. Yeah, the Edomites. Not the Ammonites, but the Edomites. So, down by Kadesh Barnea and, way down there is where Esau would be in charge of. But yeah, so Jacob he went to Succoth first. Yeah, he built a house, built corrals per se for the livestock, which is how that town got its name, or that location. And then he left there, and he traveled to Shechem, which is the land of Canaan, which we have already visited Shechem a couple of times between Abraham and Isaac. Abraham's been there twice. Both times he was asked to leave because the people of Shechem were scared of how powerful Abraham was. Isaac was there once as a layover. And so Jacob now shows up, and he bought land from Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. It says money, I'm assuming it's silver. And he built an altar. So he's established himself now on the borders of Shechem. And that's where we leave him for right now.
So where did Esau go? Back home?
Yeah. Which is probably, you look at it now, I forgot where Seir was. Now I looked it up. That's a long ways to travel. So there's a reason why he has 400 men with him.
It's a day and a half motorcycle ride.
So it's not like we're going to take 20 guys and go on a trip through all this land where people may not like us, right? It makes it a lot more reasonable now why he has 400 men. It's not just to go intimidate Jacob. It's also a big reason why he's like, well, here, I'll leave you some of my men, because you may not make it back to my land safely. But Jacob's like, we're good. Got it. Right.
This is why I don't have maps. The whole land, what we consider the whole land of Israel now, and I understand that the land of Canaan encompasses somewhat more land, but the whole area isn't very wide.
No.
But so the maps are somewhat not representative of today.
Okay, so
I mean, you can drive all the way from the Dead Sea clear to the Mediterranean in 2 hours.
yeah. So I don't know how well you can see this, but this is what it looks like from modern times. So the Jordan River splits Israel and Jordan nowadays, right? But all this western side over here, that was all Israel back then. That was all Canaan. Yeah. So Succoth is in the Jordan right now. It's in the city of Jordan. It's just a mile over the Jordan River, roughly, but on the east side. But it's over where my finger is, roughly. So it's along the border, but it is definitely in Jordan. Shechem is just halfway between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, directly over, roughly. But that's where Shechem is. Seir is all the way down here by the Negev region. They're down here in the mountains. They control the southern border of what Canaan was. So Canaan did not extend all the way down here, right? Israel, it shows here, goes all the way down to here. I don't know if it still technically does that now. They keep changing stuff, but this is kind of where the border of Canaan was, because that's where the border of good land was. Once you hit this mountain region, that's where Esau was, at the base of those mountains. He controlled the mountains. Seir was at the bottom of it on Canaan's side. He controlled that southern border. So you're going from up here all the way down here to this area. So you got Sinai over here, you have Arabah over here, and Negev here.
That down south there, that wouldn't be an easy place to exist nowadays, anyway. That even back in those days, that was pretty dry ground.
Yeah. Well, we know because they wandered through the wilderness. That was the wilderness. But that puts you a little bit of a location map, right? Jacob's staying up here. Esau's heading back down here. Obviously, Jacob didn't follow Esau. You kind of wonder. So we don't know yet. I haven't read ahead because it tells you where like Isaac dies and stuff. But the last place that they were at was right down here. If you go like halfway down the Dead Sea and then over, that was where the town that Abraham was buried at, and that's where Isaac was staying when Jacob left. And that's the last time we've heard anything about Isaac. So that's where they were then. It's been 20 years. I don't remember if he's still there or if he's moved. Again, I have to read ahead, but it's coming up soon because Isaac's not going to be alive much longer. But that's where they're at now, Shechem, up in the middle of Canaan.
I know Abraham bought that cave. Isaac and Israel were buried in the same cave as Abraham was.
Yeah, I just don't know if he dies there.
But they all returned to there eventually.
Well, that was the big thing with Joseph too, right? Bring Joseph's bones back to Canaan.
Got carried back there too. This makes all that stuff real life.
Paul, can you close us in prayer, please?